All right, so this morning I woke up and I put together a profile of what all my Gen Z workers have looked like over the past few years. And they all had very similar characteristics, from the depression to the unable to find a relationship with anyone to watching a lot of anime. I crunched all that data together. I shoved it into Chat GPT and it created a script. And I made 4 talking points from that script. But this all came about because yesterday, as I was getting ready to leave from the office, my Gen Z asked what I was doing this weekend. And anyone who's been here with me for any amount of time knows that I don't do anything. I rarely leave my house other than to do errands, go to the gym, and then I sit here in the dark. So I told him I'd be sitting around in the dark waiting for work to start Monday morning. Which I looked at his face and he disapproved with what I had just said about what I was doing on the weekend. And I just told him plain as day. I don't have any friends. I don't have any family. I don't really have any extra activities that I do. I'm a person that doesn't really have a life. I just come to work and I go home and that's it. That's my whole life. It's been my whole life since I was a teenager. I've never really amounted to anything. And I think he could see a lot of what his own life was going to look like based on that statement. And so when I was putting together this profile about them, it really stood out that lots of my Gen Z see their future in me because they're just like me. They're people who are societal rejects, people who couldn't start a conversation or maintain a conversation with a woman to save their lives. And yet, there they are, still hopeful. Now, if you're 20 years old, you don't want to be like, oh my God, I don't want to end up like that old man, millennial steam, out here on the internet talking about how much life sucks. But the reality is that most of us are going to end up alone. And this includes many more women than what we used to believe. Because even Susie Rottencrotch knows that being a single mom ain't worth it anymore. And she's probably wearing the chastity belt a little bit more often than she's accustomed to. Anyhow, with that said, let's get into our 4 talking points from the AI generated script. So I'm not going to sit here and read scripts. I'm just going to give you guys one sentence that it produced, and then I'm going to take it from there. So let's get started with talking point number 1. Independence and self-sufficiency, but in doing so, it isolates the individual. So isolation is part of our society. And I think it really stems from our employers not wanting us to talk to each other. The corporation doesn't want you sharing information. It doesn't want you gossiping. It doesn't want you talking about how much you make. Because once people start coming together against the corporation, that's where unions come in. And the last thing that they want to do is pay fair wages. So having people who are individuals is much more beneficial to the corporation. So I think that our society goes out of its way to make sure that people are individuals and therefore they don't prioritize having meaningful relationships with people at work or having relationships with people outside of work because let's face it, an unhappy worker that's isolated is much more likely to come back to a miserable job. I've said this 100 times, but happy people don't take miserable jobs. They want their environment to cater to them. They want to come to work. They want self actualization. They want their work to mean something. But the reality is that 99% of work is just a job that you go to until you get fired. That's been my experience with work my entire life. You just keep going until they tell you can't come back. And therefore, you are kept as a independent person from your environment. So the individual doesn't have any strength. And that's the problem with the proletariat, is that the proletariat doesn't want to unite under one banner. They want to stay as individuals, and individuals don't win battles. And so that's the great way of keeping things the same. Talking point number two, the profitability of loneliness. Profit from individuals who feel incomplete, create a system where isolation drives spending on products and experiences meant to fill the emotional void. Think about this, people. Football season just started, or as I prefer to call it, Pro Ball. Every wacko out there is excited about Pro Ball, even though it bears no, what did it call it? No change on your personal life or your personal experience. But everyone, like I went to go eat at Raising Cane's yesterday, and the whole place was decked out in red. And I think it said something like Red Wave on the door or something like that. But that's how easy it is to get the pros excited to spending money on entertainment that doesn't serve them in any purpose. So the profitability of loneliness is just heightened by a society that realizes, hey, there's a lot of people out there who are going to use sporting events as a way of trying to bond with the rest of the proletariat. If there's anything the proletariat loves more than grown men, you know, throwing a ball around with each other, is just, I don't get that. But spending on experiences to fill the void, imagine that. That's the entire entertainment industry trying to fill the void, the emotional void, whether it's with food products, movies, Netflix, whatever your choice is, they're the cheapest form of entertainment to fill the void. Because for the proletariat, you're not selling them fancy vacations. You're not selling them anything that associated with luxury is not associated with the proletariat. The proletariat is full of loneliness and people trying to get rid of the loneliness. And mainly they do that with alcohol, substance abuse, and filling it with entertainment. That's why there's so many subscription services out there, because they know where you are. You're not out there in the wild. You're not out there climbing a mountain. You're not out there, hanging out. You're sitting at home watching Pro Ball on your TV. And that's where they have to reach into your pocket, because these corporations have had to adjust their business models as more and more people aren't going out. And why aren't they going out? The simple reason they don't have the money. So it's creating a society of very isolated individuals that still have money, because the corporation can't exist without the money in your pocket. So they have to figure out ways of, well, the proletariat is lonely, depressed, and needs a pick me up when it comes to providing something, a product, right? When you're providing a product for people who are lonely and depressed and sitting at home, you have to bring it into where they are. And that's why I think it's such a scary thing to believe that corporations have designed entertainment around loneliness. All right, talking point number three, the paradox of how the more time we spend online, the lonelier we become. So, this I think is something that I've noticed about all my Gen Z workers, is that they do spend all of their time online. I mean, I do. I mean, I'm not Gen Z, but what else do? You don't come home and turn on the TV and see what's on cable anymore. You come home, you turn on your computer, and you watch some anime, or the darker version of anime. They all look at it, every one of them, but the lonelier they get, because every man that I've ever met has a Bumble account, a Tinder account, whatever dating service you think that you might be able to meet someone. And at the end of the day, all of these guys that are sitting at home online, And again, playing video games is really big still among younger generations because they're still kids. And so they're online with their online friends, and so they don't feel that loneliness, a disconnection from society because they think I'm hanging out with these people I've never met on the internet. You don't know who those people are. And that's how they spend their time. And so that just being connected to the internet adds a lot to your overall loneliness. And these platforms thrive on our engagement and need for validation. And that's why there's so much Instagram and Facebook is there's that need for validation even though we're individuals, we're stuck at home. Human beings, you can't separate the human being part of humans because human beings will always be human beings. And even though we're lonely, we're stressed, we're depressed, and we're sitting at home, for most people, they still need to engage and they have a need for validation. If that's social validation online, it's still what they need. It's still something you're going to thrive for. And I don't know why that is because I gave up on it a long time ago. But I will tell you that having had so many Gen Z workers, it's something that they talk about all the time. And they talk about it in a way in which they don't give it the importance that it truly has. They try to brush it off. And I just look at them like, you're trying really hard. Like yesterday, I had a conversation with my Gen Z about where all his friends are. And he doesn't have any friends. He has his virtual friends that he hangs out with. Like this weekend, he was planning on playing video games with his online friends. And I was just like, well, do you know these people? And he's like, no, I just met them online. And I'm just like, okay. So you're hanging out with four dudes and you guys don't know each other. Seems like a way to socialize, huh? But that's just the way it is. So, talking point number 4 is connection between rising rates of depression, anxiety with a breakdown in real human connections. So, that's what I was just talking about. Real human connections are going the way of the dodo bird. I think that we come to work and we don't really have social connections that we don't have real human connections. And that girl from work, which I've known her for the entire time that I've worked for this company, her need for validation finally came to a point in which she had to reach out to somebody. And as she looked around at her work, there was no one there. And once she started coming into my office to visit with me, it wasn't out of I like millennial steam. It was, I don't have anyone else to talk to. And when she sat in my office and chatted with me for about an hour the other day, I could really see that. Like that the need for human contact, for human connection was so desperate that I could see in her eyes that she's 100% remote most of the time, so she never comes to the office. But when she was there, she was looking around for someone, anyone, because she'd been sitting at home feeling depressed. You don't sit around at night crying because you're happy. You sit around at night because your emotional needs aren't being met. And that's exactly what I got from her is that she was sitting around at home and letting me know, telling me that she felt this way. And that's not something you normally tell a stranger, especially not a strange man. And there's that need for girls to feel comforted, but at the same time, they don't want to feel vulnerable. And that's something that all human beings they struggle with because you want to have human connections, but you don't want to feel vulnerable. And that's what I felt from this Susie, is that she came to me because she needed validation. She needed to feel like someone cared about her because obviously sitting at home for so many months, not feeling well, not being disconnected from her family, that was another big thing that she told me right away. It's like, I asked her because her mom used to work at the same office like last year, I think, and her mom got fired. And I mean, I couldn't imagine coming to a job where you know that your boss fired your mom and feeling good about that. But it was, I don't know, I keep thinking about her. I actually thought about her all night. Not because she's ultra pretty or because she's, you know, a dream girl. No, it was that need, that human connection need that she came to me to get this week. And I don't think I've ever felt that from another person where it was just a desperate need to be heard, to be felt, for someone to make you feel like you're actually a person. And the more that we talked, when she left the first time, she's like, I needed that. That's exactly what she said. It's like, I needed that. I needed to feel like someone cared about me. Even though I don't know you, I needed that. And I was just like, that's really strange because obviously I don't get many visitors in my office. In fact, on the average day, I'd say that no one visits me. And other than delivery people, that's about it. So most of my days spent just, you know, talking as little as I can to my Gen Z and figuring out what's going on inside of that coconut. And for the most part, not a whole lot. They are still very much so children inside of their heads. They still think about their parents a lot. They still talk to their parents every single day. They still think about going home. They think about doing childish things with their paychecks, like buying video games and whatnot. I mean, he was towards the end of the day, he was shopping on Amazon for trinkets, and I thought, that's a person that life is never going to force them to grow up in the sense that generations prior to them had to. Because a person at that age 20 years ago was thinking about his wife, his kids, his mortgage, saving for retirement. Because of the quality of life and the extremely low wages in our society, the wages themselves are keeping us children. We're not advancing in life. We're not doing the normal things for people our own age were doing, used to do. Because of the lack of resources and the extremely low quality version of life that we're living, we're not advancing in our mentality. I think the loneliness and despair that we see in our society is because there's nothing to look forward to. As I said at the beginning of the video, when he asked me what I was doing this weekend, I'm practically one paycheck away from being a homeless person. And when you're that stressed out financially, and it's across the board, across our entire society, wages haven't kept up with the cost of living. And so we're all sitting around waiting for what bad thing is going to happen to us. We're all wondering how the election is going to go in less than 2 months. I'm going to keep mentioning that because it's a big deal. And even though nothing changes, dramatically with whoever left or right gets into the geriatric hospital we call the White House, it's still it's a strain to think about what these people are saying about the future of America because it doesn't look good unless we have dramatic change in this country stemming from increasing the overall quality of life for the average person. Things aren't going to get any better. They're normalizing these types of extremely low wages, and you kind of just like you scratch your head and you're like, if they're not going to make our lives better, people have disconnected from society. And that's this entire video is about that, the disconnection we see from people living normal lives. They're trying to normalize this sitting at home doing nothing and engaging in cheap forms of entertainment to pass the time so that we have at least something to look forward to. So we're not just sitting at home staring at a blank wall while we eat ramen and think, what, this is great. This is amazing. I can't wait to do this again when I get home from work tomorrow. But it's the weekend, and for most of us, I mean, in a few hours, I imagine the proletariat's going to wake up, turn on the TV and watch Pro Bowl until it's time to go to sleep after having a few too many drinks and maybe even finding their own Susie somewhere around the corner. But what did I put into toxic positivity? Failure. At the basics is more common but still seen in the same light as single moms. Failure in our society. I see it everywhere. I mean, I wake up in the morning and I go brush my teeth and I see failure in the mirror. And learning to accept failure as normal is something that you have to learn to do. Because if you're overly concerned that you don't want to be a loser and yet you live in a loser house, you have a loser job, you drive a Promobile, and you think that you're just going to suddenly break free of that, it's not going to happen unless something miraculous happens. So you have to come to terms with failure as being the default position of human beings. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. If you guys love watching more dystopian entertainment, keep coming back and I will keep making this stuff because I enjoy doing it.